What up, guys? Your boy Quake back with a brand new episode of the Diverse Mentality Podcast, number 373. And really, there's not much news, man. The only thing we're going to get into in this podcast is Snoop Dogg and Daz Dillinger going back and forth. Then I'm going to discuss a lot of things surrounding the 50 Cent Netflix documentary, with Diddy's response, with Jay-Z potentially saying something, with the lawsuits that could potentially happen, how they obtain this footage. And then after that, I want to actually break down the documentary and give my thoughts, my review of the documentary. So that's really all this episode is going to be. Like I said, there really isn't much news. So let's get into this. And we're going to start with the Snoop Dogg stuff. Daz Dillinger, Snoop Dogg's cousin and a part of Death Row back in the 90s, has decided to voice more of his frustration with not being able to own his own music and not getting paid properly now that Snoop Dogg owns Death Row Records. So Daz decided to make a video explaining what is going on and his frustration with not being paid properly. And Snoop Dogg himself has decided to respond, and then Daz responded to that. We've been covering this whole back and forth and Daz's frustrations for a while now on the podcast, but this is a very clearer, indication of what's going on. So let's play the Daz Dillinger clip, and then I'll talk about what he's talking about in that, and then we'll talk about Snoop Dogg's part of it.
Okay, so you own everything, so that's all your stuff. Now, you were saying something about the paw. Now, what are you talking about with the paw?
Well, like I was saying, the paw is trademarked. Like I told Snoop, you got rejected and I got accepted. You know what I'm saying? So that was the moneymaker. The paw is like the Apple sign, like I said before. And like I said, they tried to go behind my back and trademark all my work and then flung my face like, yeah, we got it. That's all we wanted. Because I'm finna sell everything for $1 billion to Universal. You know what I mean? But I'll be selling my shit.
Now, what do you mean by selling? He said he was going to sell it, or what? They're selling Death Row, the new Death Row that just came?
Snoop, everything Snoop is involved with, he gonna sell all that for $1 billion. The motherfuckers cashing it out for their catalog. And then he sell that and he just start over and make new music. It's easy. You sell what you got. You know what I'm saying? Got all that money. I mean, I don't count niggas' pocket, but I got my own pocket. You know what I mean?
Now, how many albums is over there? At Death Row? Because you were saying that it was the Doggy Style, and it was two other ones you was talking about?
Yeah. The shit I got on the wall right here, you know what I'm saying? The Chronic is already going back to Dr. Dre. Tupac that took all his greatest hits album, all his albums, all his shit back over to Amaru. So what is left on Death Row? But I'm coming to get my shit, so what's going to be left on Death Row? So he got to make new catalog, and that's where all the new cats come in at, you know what I'm saying? Making new content.
So as you can see in the clip, first, he's talking about the paw, that the dog paw, that's the logo that's from their projects that they had on Death Row. He's saying that's valued at a lot of money and that he took the trademark and copyrights to that. He's also saying that Snoop Dogg is going behind the scenes trying to sell Death Row Records to Universal for $1 billion and try to take all of Daz's stuff and push it over there so that Daz doesn't get any money out of the situation. Daz is saying, hey, Dr. Dre got his stuff, the Chronic, out of there, and he owns that. And he's saying Tupac's family and his estate got his stuff out of Death Row, and they own that. But he's like, what about me? So I need to take my stuff out and own my stuff and not be sold out and not have a single penny from the stuff that I've recorded over at Death Row Records. Remember, this is Daz Dillinger's point of view on things, and this is how he feels about what's going on. We don't know the behind the scenes, if Snoop Dogg is actually shopping to get Death Row Records sold for $1 billion over at Universal. That's never been confirmed. There's never been reports of that anywhere, at least. So Snoop Dogg decides that he's finally sick and tired of hearing Daz go at him. So he decides to make a response video, and this is what Snoop Dogg had to say.
I see you ain't got to do but hate on me, huh? In a minute, I'm gonna f you up, cuz, on some real shit. Not physically, but business-wise. Cause you broke as a right now, so I'm gonna f you up in a minute, cuz. Leave me alone. Leave me the f alone.
You didn't put that on the internet.
Leave me alone, cuz. I'm gonna f you up. Leave me alone.
there's Snoop Dogg's response. He's saying, financially, I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to use my power in whichever way I can to then, go back and forth legally with this stuff. And, at least he's not saying it in a physical way. He's saying, hey, I'm going to do this just because you need to stop going at me throughout this whole time. And Snoop Dogg's been very quiet, to be honest with you. He hasn't really gone back and forth with him because, I don't know, maybe he feels like he's lying, whatever the case may be. It's, we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. But that's Snoop Dogg's response. Then Daz decides to respond to that on Instagram, and this is what he says. He reposts that Snoop Dogg video, and in the caption he says this. He mad now. Now he want to fuck me up business-wise by trying to steal everything I own that was on death row by forged signature and not paying royalties since he had the label, using our royalties to pay his staff. They're making more than the artist. I sued Suge Knight back in the day. Should I do the same to Cuz? It's all in my name. The publishing numbers don't change unless, LOL, you a thief. You can't starve me out. I'm independent. I run my own ship. Always have. You little B word. And that's his response to what Snoop Dogg has said. As always, we've always covered this. Even Daz Dillinger used my podcast clip in one of his videos on social media. We've always been covering it back and forth. So if there's any updates that go on legally in terms of lawsuits, I just hope, they're cousins. I hope they can just eventually have a conversation since Snoop Dogg responded, and they can have a conversation, sit down, go over everything, because they've all worked really hard, and death row has really just been essentially a curse. So if everyone can kind of come out of this situation better, and kind of at least get some type of benefit from all the hard work that they did back then, that would be great. I mean, that's the end goal of things, because death row just ended up, Pac getting killed, Suge getting locked up. It spiraled into all this Diddy stuff that's going on. And, now Diddy's locked up and, Biggie's dead, all this stuff. It just transpired into a lot of commotion that didn't need to happen. So at least if some good comes out of it where artists can get paid for their previous work, that'll be great. I don't know if, Daz is telling the truth or Snoop Dogg. Who knows? We all don't know. We don't know the behind the scenes of stuff. So that's up for you guys to decide, make your own opinions. But that's the update on what's going on with Daz and Snoop Dogg. 50 Cent seems to be the hot topic right now because of his Netflix Diddy documentary, and Diddy isn't happy about it one bit. There's going to be potential lawsuits that could happen, and there are a lot of questions about how 50 obtained that behind-the-scenes footage of days before Diddy got locked up. So first, let's get into Diddy's response, his team's response, and what they had to say about the documentary the second it came out. This is the statement. Netflix's so-called documentary is a shameful hit piece. Today's GMA teaser confirms that Netflix relied on stolen footage that was never authorized for release. As Netflix and CEO Ted Sarandos know, Mr. Combs has been amassing footage since he was 19 to tell his own story in his own way. It is fundamentally unfair and illegal for Netflix to misappropriate that work. Netflix is plainly desperate to sensationalize every minute of Mr. Combs' life without regard for truth in order to capitalize on a never-ending media frenzy. If Netflix cared about the truth or about Mr. Combs' legal rights, it would not be ripping private footage out of context, including conversations with his lawyers that were never intended for public viewing. No rights in that material were ever transferred to Netflix or any third party. It is equally staggering that Netflix handed creative control to Curtis 50 Cent Jackson, a longtime adversary with personal vendetta who has spent too much time slandering Mr. Combs. Beyond the legal issues, this is a personal breach of trust. Mr. Combs has long respected Ted Sarandos and admired the legacy of Clarence Avant. For Netflix to give his life story to someone who has publicly attacked him for decades feels like an unnecessary and deeply personal affront. At minimum, he expected fairness from people he respected. And believe it or not, if you actually watch the documentary, it's pretty fair. I mean, they make it very clear that, hey, Diddy hasn't been charged with the certain charges that people think he has been charged with. They make it clear that there has been no ties to him having done anything to Tupac or Biggie. They make it like very, very clear with both sides. And they said they reached out to people on Diddy's side, but they never wanted to be involved. So there's only so much you can do. I mean, I make documentaries myself. And when I made my Give It Your Die Trying documentary, of course, I reached out to literally everybody that could, but some people just don't respond. Some people don't want to be involved. And there's nothing you can do about that. You can only tell their side of the story and keep it moving. Netflix then responded to what Diddy and his team had to say, and they said this: the claims being made about Sean Combs' The Reckoning are false. The project has no ties to any past conversations between Sean Combs and Netflix. The footage of Combs leading up to his indictment and arrest were legally obtained. This is not a hit piece or an act of retribution. Curtis Jackson is an executive producer but does not have creative control. No one was paid to participate. The director who has creative control, Alexandria Stapleton, released a statement and said this: we moved heaven and earth to keep the filmmaker's identity confidential. One thing about Sean Combs is that he's always filming himself, and it's been an obsession throughout the decades. We also reached out to Sean Combs' legal team for an interview and comment multiple times, but did not hear back. She did say the footage was legally obtained as well, and I talked to someone very close to the situation, and he said the same thing, that this footage, how the footage even ended up coming out, was that the guy that was shooting it was supposed to get paid by Diddy, never got paid. But because the contract was never filled out, there was another person under there that owned the rights to the footage, and they were able to kind of, it's like a extra layer of defense. That person that was under the person shooting was able to, release the footage or sell it or whatever the case may be. So they obtained, then of course Netflix and Alexandria and then Curtis 50 Cent Jackson, they all obtained the footage, and that's how I got in the documentary. It's really through Diddy's doing. Just pay the people what they're owed for whatever they shot. Even in the documentary, you can see Diddy has a problem with paying people for their work. Diddy's lawyers also tried to send a cease and desist to shut the documentary down, but that did not work. 50's been having a field day since the documentary came out. On his Instagram page, he posted the Good Morning America interview he did, and he said, "What feud? I put 2 of his kids in my scripted TV shows. I just didn't like the fruity stuff he said to me." And he said fruity stuff to me. I don't like that, LOL. 50 also said that Jay-Z reached out to him and thanked him for not putting him in the documentary. Now, of course, this could be trolling, as 50 likes to troll. He posted a funny video of Jay-Z dancing around, and in the caption he said, "This the message Jay-Z sent me when he realized he's not in the Diddy doc, LOL." So obviously trolling on 50's end, but still funny nonetheless. 50 also has been on a press run, and one of the most interesting interviews that he's done is with GQ. And the reason why is because he mentions his baby mama in this actual interview, and he says some wild things. So first, let's go over the questions that the GQ person is asking and 50's responses. So it starts out with the GQ person saying, 50, you expressed your interest in producing this fairly quickly once everything started happening, and you guys turned it around just as quickly. What about this case and this story compelled you to want to make a documentary about it as it was all unfolding? 50 said, to be honest, just the culture itself. If someone's not saying something, then you would assume that everybody in hip-hop is okay with what's going on, because other rappers will say, I ain't going to say nothing. I'm going to mind my business. Because of a position that Diddy held in the culture for so long, you understand? So that would leave me. Without me saying that I will do it, there's nobody there. The GQ person says, so in your mind, that is like you drawing a line in the sand here, making this and putting the right context around it. 50 said, that's right, because if it's one person's decision, one person's behavior, it's not the entire culture's behavior. Now, here's where the interesting part comes in, where 50 mentions his baby mama, because there was a question of, will 50 include his baby mama and all the stuff that Diddy was doing with her? People were probably going to criticize him for not including her. And 50 himself says in this that he wanted her in the documentary. But remember, 50 was not the director in this project. He was simply the executive producer, so he didn't have much creative control. And I'm pretty sure the baby mama did not want to be in the documentary regardless. The GQ person says this, 50, your critics would say that your decision to produce a documentary like this was just based on your personal feelings or animus towards Puffy. What do you say to that? 50 said, what I say to them is the one person that I wish was in the doc that would create clarity for people in a different way is Jane Doe. Now, if you don't know who Jane Doe is, it is 50's baby mama, Daphne Joy. They had to obviously change her name on there because, she didn't go publicly with this. She went privately at the testimonial and all that stuff when she was called to at the stand during the trial. So she went privately as Jane Doe. She didn't go as her actual name, but 50 mentioned her name in this interview. And then he continues and says, so you could see someone who was willing to do it for money. Do you understand? Cassie came in so early. She's a baby at 19. Look at the innocent energy that you feel when his kids are walking into the courtroom and you're sympathetic to them. That's who Cassie was when she met him. She was a 19-year-old girl like that. So the things that went through and the influence of finances and everything she wanted for her life and music culture and entertainment is all connected. And it's an interesting play, bro, and it's hard. Where's she going? It is a really interesting balance of things because people think of how a woman who has a moral compass, a traditional woman, would feel under those circumstances. They don't think about hoes. Now, hoes are a bit different. They're not so emotionally connected to the sexual experience. So they can have that sexual experience with those other people as long as you're going to pay. You see what I'm saying to you? If the person's a frequent OnlyFans person and already solicited and looking for somebody to pay, and you meet them and you tell them, just be who you are and meet other people and do it in front of me, you don't think they'll do it. So he basically is calling his baby mama a hoe, essentially. That's what he's saying out of this. He's saying, I wish she would have been included in the documentary because you would have saw someone that was genuinely doing the things that she was doing with Diddy for the money. And that's the problem. In this documentary, we didn't get, we got a guy that was a former sex worker that did stuff for the money. But it would have been great to get like a female's perspective on that as well. But obviously she didn't want to be a part of it. Continuing on, the GQ person says, I feel like that's what Alex was getting at. The complexities of everything are really interesting and layered. 50 says, there's so much in it, bro. There's so much in it. It only makes sense as a project when you watch it because of Alex's alignment of these things. Alex is obviously the director. There you go. It's clear as day. 50 would have included her if she would have accepted it. And I truly believe he would have done that because 50 was dealing with her before the Diddy stuff. And then obviously as they got separated, she decided to do her own thing, and to get a lavish lifestyle still funded, she decided to, do things with Diddy as well, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. That's how some people move. That's the reality of the situation. But let me know what you guys think of all the stuff going back and forth. Did Jay-Z actually text 50? I have no idea, but that is funny still. But we'll keep our eyes posted and see what happens if there is actually any legal lawsuits or anything that goes on. I highly doubt it because Netflix especially has a huge team of lawyers that they make sure that every, dot is dotted, every T is crossed, everything. That's why I think the documentary is actually titled Sean Combs instead of Diddy, because maybe the brand name Diddy would have gotten an easier lawsuit. I don't know. But regardless, 50 definitely, executed, and it is a great piece of documentary that is number one on Netflix right now. All right, let's break down this Sean Combs The Reckoning Netflix documentary. There are 4 episodes, roughly an hour each, and they each have their own part that plays a pivotal, I think, role, and it's very well executed, and how, it leads up to what's happening now in the present day with Diddy. The first episode is titled Pain versus Love, and this episode highlights how Diddy was brought up with his family, mainly his mother, and then how he started to get into the music industry. And it highlights the first incident that happens relating to Diddy being in the music industry, and it's a violent one with people actually dying. So I'm going to go to my notes here, and here are some of the key points. His childhood friend says his mother hosted very provocative parties while he was growing up. So that tells you right there, he learned from his mother where these parties came from. At least that's what his childhood friend says, that he saw this stuff coming up as a child. And what's crazy is when you go to the 4th episode, Diddy is doing the same thing to his kids. Instead of grooming them to run his empire, his business, he's bringing them along with these Diddy parties and these Diddy freak-offs. At least that's what's allegedly being, said and accused of, right? So it's like Diddy didn't learn. Diddy focused on the business side, got richer, but then in turn did what his mom, showed him as a kid to his kids as well, which is a crazy cycle. And now his kids, who knows what they're going to end up doing if they actually got involved in that stuff. They're probably going to end up doing the same thing. And now they got money, and they actually didn't earn the money. So now the money's going to be blown like it's nothing once Diddy is gone. His childhood friend says that Diddy got brutal beatings by his mother. And we're talking brutal, brutal beatings. Maybe grooming him to be a certain way, to not be a sucker, to not be pushed around. And that's where psychologically probably something went wrong with Diddy, where he has this aggressive side and then he's got this freak off side, from seeing his mother do the parties to getting beat. Now, the first person that comes in the documentary to accuse Diddy of doing something to her is Joy Dickerson Neal. She claims that Diddy assaulted her in 1991 and says someone later told her there was a video and even described it to her. So Diddy was allegedly playing this video of what he did to her to other people. Joy's mother wrote a letter to Diddy's mother confronting her about it. Joy says Diddy later got on his knees and told her that he never did it. Diddy looked up to Alpo, who would film girls and play the footage at parties. Alpo was a gangster in New York, and he would do that freaky stuff of filming women and doing stuff to them. The first tragedy that happens in Diddy's career is early on. It's the City College gym tragedy where 9 people die. But the weird thing is this puts more eyes on Diddy, actually makes him more popular, which should be the opposite, right? If you host an event and people die, people should stop messing with you, right? You just don't know how to host events and you just got 9 people killed. Instead, it did the opposite, which is the weirdest thing ever. But this whole thing is just weird. It just doesn't make any sense of how back in the day people would just let things slide a lot easier than now. Now, one of Diddy's friends alleges that he saw Diddy slap his mother and call her a bitch for questioning him after the tragedy. Questioning his career path is what she was doing. Like, should you do this now after that incident? Apparently, he put his hands on her and called her a bitch, which is crazy. Diddy and Eric Sermon eventually became cool. Eric Sermon was a big rapper at that time. He got cool with him, and he decided to get his ex, Misa. And there were rumors that Diddy would allegedly beat Misa due to jealousy. Andre Harrell, who was his mentor, ends up firing Diddy. He gave him Biggie, though, and said that, hey, you can find a new home. Kirk Burroughs was given 25% of Bad Boy stock, and Janice Combs was given 75% to prevent families from collecting after the City College tragedy. Burroughs says they had a $10 million deal, and Diddy gave him $1.5 million. Then one day, Misa was in Eric Sermon's truck, and Diddy swung on him. They were supposed to drive around the corner to fight, but instead, Diddy played juicy for him. Diddy was obsessed with I Get Around, which inspired Big Papa. So this is where we get into Diddy's obsession with Tupac. He saw the success Death Row Records was having, Suge Knight, Dr. Dre, Tupac, Snoop Dogg, and wanted to copy that success, literally word for word, bar for bar, which is crazy. And I always had heard, when I did my Diddy $1 million hit on Tupac's life documentary, I always had heard that Diddy was jealous of Tupac. And it shows in this documentary that he would see who the it guy is and take that it guy's girl. That's what he wanted to do, which is some greasy slimeball stuff. But hey, what can I expect? I mean, this is Diddy we're talking about here. Burroughs believes Diddy had a lot to do with Pac's death. At this point, we get to episode 2, which is called What Goes Up Must Come Down. And the interesting thing about this episode is it heavily focuses on Biggie and Tupac. And I know you guys are probably like, I've heard the Biggie and Tupac story 100 million times, but mainly it focuses on how it could have been potentially all Diddy's fault and how Suge Knight, didn't really have that big of a role in it. Diddy kind of escalated things way further, with Suge Knight's homie getting killed because of Diddy's actions at that one event in Atlanta. And I covered this in my Diddy $1 million hit on Tupac's life, in my documentary, all of this, of why I even think Diddy had something to do with Tupac's death and actually put that $1 million hit. But the interesting thing about this whole thing is that a lot of people that knew Biggie and Pac say that Biggie and Pac were cool. Pac really loved Biggie, loved what he was doing, wanted to work with him. And Pac always wanted to work with Biggie, but didn't want to work with Diddy. He wanted nothing to do with Diddy. So really, Diddy was this like fork in the road, this kind of wall, this issue that was causing the tension between Biggie and Pac. And that Diddy was getting into Biggie's ear and saying, dude, you have to respond. You have to diss Tupac. You have to go at him, blah, blah, blah. And Biggie was really against that a lot of times. He didn't want to escalate things at all. So in my notes here, I have Pac showed up to record at Quad Studios. Lil Cease tried to get him from downstairs, but he says 2 armed men told him to get back on the elevator. Pac is shot 5 times. Puffy denied involvement at the time, but Pac believed he was set up. Kirk Burrows recalls Diddy calling him into his office strictly to show him a woman giving Diddy a blowjob, fellatio, a sign of his mind to come, which is weird. It's like your person who's running your record label, you call him in the room just to show that you're getting fellatio from a woman. Makes no damn sense. That's that Diddy party weird stuff that's coming into play. And mind you, in the first episode too, Diddy didn't smoke or drink and didn't want to have anything to do with that. But now he's slowly getting to this point where he's starting to do drugs and he's starting to get into this lifestyle of doing these crazy things. Burrows says Diddy later walked in his office with a bat and demanded Burrows return the 25% stock he originally gave him when they founded Bad Boy. Burrows claims he didn't want to give it back, but did so to stay in Diddy's good graces. In 2003, Burrows sued over this matter, but the case was dismissed. Burrows said Diddy learned how to rob his artists from Uptown Records, but perfected it. Artists couldn't follow the money, and Diddy paid himself at every step. There are a lot of reports of Diddy just not paying his artists. Craig Mack's wife recalls Mack asking Puffy for money and promising to repay him after a show. She says Puffy pulled out a stack of cash and handed Mack a single $100 bill. Disgusting, right? Al B. sure appears as Suge Knight is mentioned. He says Suge protected him like no one else. Diddy found out Craig Mack was being courted by Death Row for Death Row East. Suge Knight's infamous Death Row invitation moment at the Source Awards is discussed. Diddy took a peace approach at the Source Awards, but didn't forget. Burrows says Diddy had him take $50,000 from the overhead account to buy Suge Knight's side chick a necklace. That's what I'm talking about. So if any man was attached to any woman, Diddy would do whatever he can in his power to take that woman from them because he felt like he was the man if he managed to do that. And for the most part, he managed to do that, unfortunately. And that's what caused a lot. Like when you're messing with someone's woman, that's where all these problems start to come because some men catch a lot of feelings for those women and it causes huge tension. Weeks after the Source Awards, Mark Curry, who was working at the Platinum House, says Puff, Suge, and Suge's friend Jake were there. Curry claims an off-duty cop escorted Jake and Suge outside. Curry says a man with a pistol appeared, looked Suge in the face, and shot Jake 5 times. Curry claims Suge grabbed Puff in a chokehold, using him as a human shield. The shooter fled. Jake died days later, and this is where the things escalated. Curry says that moment officially started the war. I agree. This is where once someone dies, it's official beef, and things escalate from there. Pac, while in jail, claimed people were telling him Biggie's people were behind the Quad shooting. Pac and Suge now had mutual enemies. He signs with Death Row and starts dissing Bad Boy. Biggie didn't want to respond. Like I said, Tupac writes, hit him up. Puff urges Biggie to respond. Who shot you drops. Puff loves it. D1, a Mansfield Crip from LA, admits he began protecting Puff. So this is where the rumors of now gangs are getting involved because Suge is with the Bloods. Puff is now with the Southside Crips. Orlando Anderson, a Southside Crip, Puff affiliate, and Keefe D's nephew try to rob a Death Row member for their chain. Soon after, Pac spotted him at a Tyson fight. Pac takes him down. The crew jumps him. Moments later, Pac is killed. Craig Mack decides against signing with Death Row. His wife claims he was scared. Keefe D met Diddy through a man named Zip. They had several conversations. And, of course, it gets into all the Keefe D and, his interview with the police. And I covered all this in my documentary, like I said. It's basically the same story of there was a hit allegedly put on Tupac's life and Suge Knight's life of $1 million, $500,000 for each, and only $500,000 was paid at the end of the day, but it never reached the hands of Keefe D. It only reached the hands of Eric Von Zip, who had close ties to Puffy. The other $500,000 was never paid because Suge Knight was never killed. And ultimately, Orlando Anderson was killed in a shooting. Zip got cancer, so the only people that were involved in Tupac's murder are Keefe D and Diddy. Now, this is the interesting part is Biggie and Diddy were warned to not go to the West Coast because of what happened to Pac. There was tensions, and it was very high tensions. Biggie wanted no parts of going to the West Coast. He was like, no, I don't want to go out there, blah, 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 blah. He had nightmares of him getting shot and killed, all kinds of stuff. Kirk Burrows recalls that he had booked Biggie to go to the UK. So they ended up going to the West Coast to promote the Life After Death album. They appeared at an award show, performed, and They then the next day decided to do a party, which was to show love to the West Coast. But that night, when they did the party, obviously after the party, Biggie got killed. But that night wasn't supposed to happen. According to Kirk, he called that morning and said, "Where's Biggie? We got to give him a flight to the UK." And Diddy was like, "Nah, that's not happening. He's staying here." Even though Biggie wanted to leave the West Coast. He wanted nothing to do with the West Coast because, like I said, he had nightmares of people trying to kill him. The other side of the story is that Diddy wanted Biggie not to go to the West Coast, and Diddy was the one that was encouraging Biggie to not go to the West Coast. And he was the one that was like, "Nah, don't do it." But, I don't know who's telling the truth in this, but that's the conflicting stories. It seems like Biggie, because Biggie himself said he was having nightmares of people shooting him. Why would he want to go to the West Coast? But somehow Diddy convinced him, and that's how things played out, and that's how Biggie ended up getting killed. The crazy thing, though, in this part 2 is that Diddy promised the biggest funeral for Biggie, but he ended up never paying for it at all, not a single penny. He charged it to Biggie's estate, which is like the most disrespectful thing you could do. If you really love Biggie that much, at the end of the day, why wouldn't you pay for, his funeral? You're taking all the money anyways. But I don't know if that's true, but that's what was said in the documentary. Here's a quick update. It turns out that the Biggie estate rumor that Diddy charged the estate is actually false. Burrow told Larissa that Diddy and Bad Boy Records paid for the funeral entirely, and royalty statements sent to Biggie's estate did not include any funeral costs. He added that he reviewed every royalty statement personally alongside Biggie's mother, Violetta Wallace, up until her death earlier this year at age 72. He also said there was no beef or dispute over contracts at the time of the rapper's death. Burrow is the guy who runs Biggie's estate right now. And what was interesting in these first and second parts was that Diddy always wanted to be the superstar. And this made it very clear. I never really, the way this documentary presented this was how it made things very clear. Like Diddy wanted to be the superstar. He didn't like the rappers being the one in the limelight. He wanted to be the guy in the limelight. And now he has nobody in the limelight. All of his artists are gone, dead, whatever the case may be. And now he's the one in the limelight. And what ends up happening was there was a Billboard or a Rolling Stone cover for Biggie after he died. It was actually in the works, then Biggie died, but they were like, let's put Biggie on there regardless. Diddy took that. He said, nope, I'm going to get on the cover. So he decided to brand himself as an artist, even though he couldn't rap at all. He had to have ghostwriters. And then that's when he started with the I'll Be Missing You and doing all this dancing on stage. And then he got maced, but still was dancing in his videos and rapping in his songs as well. So he wanted to be the superstar. He wanted to be the guy in the limelight, and he officially got everybody removed. And now he used them for whatever he could use them at the time, but they're all out of here. Now he's the official person in the limelight. And that made it to me clear as day. I was shocked because I was like, I didn't really look at it from that point of view. So that's one thing that this documentary did really well, is that it kind of put things in a interesting perspective that I didn't really think about. And that's what I like about documentaries. If they can do that for me, regardless of the story being told 100 million times, it was told with different perspectives, which is really well done. Now on to episode 3, and this is where we get into, how Diddy got his rise to fame as him being the star, how he started to manipulate more situations. I mean, we get into the shooting with Shine. We get into the part where he decides to go with a bat and beat Steve Stout, all kinds of stuff. So there's more stuff happening in his life where more crazier things happen. And as you can see, if all these crazy things are happening in his life and he's getting away with it, of course he's going to continue doing this stuff. Like in 1999 with the shooting, he shouldn't have gotten away with that. That should have been, hey, let's draw the line here. But unfortunately, these guys are powerful. They don't learn from their mistakes, and they just keep doing it until finally, we're in 2025 and he's finally locked up. And he's not even locked up for that long. So let's go over the notes that I have. And the episode starts with Diddy in 2024 talking about depositing $200 million days before his arrest. Bad Boy co-founder calls Misa Diddy's first project, recalling times that she needed money to raise just around the same time Diddy was courting Kim. So Kim Porter. Kalina Harper describes Kim Porter as that bitch, saying she ran things with Puff and spoke up for herself. She did show. She was one of the few females that didn't tolerate Diddy and the stuff that he was doing. It flashbacks to 1997. Diddy's on the rise after Biggie's death. Mark Curry speaks about writing for Puff on the Godzilla soundtrack. The song was a hit. Diddy was dating J-Lo, and Curry was staying at Diddy's home with Shine. The 1999 nightclub shooting happens. 8 months earlier, Curry recalls Halzika Walker complaining about Puff's role in the Hate Me Now video, specifically the scene where he's on a cross. He asked Steve Stout to pull the video, but Stout refused, so Puff and his security team allegedly beat him with a chair, a telephone, and a champagne bottle. Stout suffered a broken arm and jaw. Diddy and his security were charged with assault. They settled out of court for $500,000, and Stout asked them to drop the charges. Back to the nightclub shooting, the judge wants Diddy, but Shine says his own lawyers basically sold him out, which, we've known this for a while. People start jumping ship. Associates leave. No Mace, no locks, no Total, no Faith. Diddy comes up with a new plan, making the band. Babs says she was given 24 hours to read the thick contract and sign. Her lawyer described it as fame, not fortune. Roger Bond says Aubrey got it the worst, and she reads explicit emails from Diddy. Yeah, this is where we get into the details of Aubrey O'Day and her dealing with the abuse that she had to deal with Diddy. Aubrey says she believes she was fired for not accepting his sexual advances. This is the crazy stuff. She has emails of Diddy saying, give me fellatio, let's do some freaky stuff. I just watched, you get it, corn and stuff like that, and let's do it, and blah, blah, blah. And she didn't want to do any of that stuff. And then that's essentially what got her fired, is what she believes. Diddy starts Dirty Money. Kalina calls Don's relationship with Diddy weird, but Cassie, 19 at the time, was also around. Ryan Leslie is dating Cassie and is in sessions with her and Diddy until he suddenly isn't. So this is what I mean. He gets with, Ryan Leslie wasn't that guy at the time, but still, he'll find a female, even if she's with someone, court her, manipulate her and say, yeah, I'll give you a career, I'll give you money, I'll give you this, to take him away from somebody, which is unfortunate because Cassie at the time was 19 years old. This is literally somebody fresh out of high school. And this guy, Diddy, is like in his mid-30s, or I don't even know how old he was at the time. Ciroc offered Diddy upwards of $100 million if he could boost their sales from 40,000 bottles to a year to 1 million. He's on another level now. He tries to juggle Kim and Cassie, but Kim eventually ends the relationship. Cassie endlessly waits for her album to drop, but Diddy was Diddy's focus. The first sex worker speaks about his time with Cassie and Diddy, who is Frank Black. The first session lasted 18 to 20 hours, and he says he saw them for 8 years. He claims they collected his semen. Yes, that actually happened. And there's the weird stuff. Like the first time he says, he met him, Diddy was like covered and like he was trying to speak with this like Southern accent, and he didn't know who this guy was, but whatever. He was standing in the corner and just like directing her what to do. Stay this way while he does this to you. Well, the weirdest stuff, right? He says they always had freak offs on and off on March 9th, which is Biggie's death. That's another weird thing. I don't know if the guilt hit Diddy's mind every time that date came and Biggie's, death anniversary came. So he decided to just do the craziest stuff to get his mind off it. But every time March 9th came, he would do some freak off stuff, which is crazy. And he took his first ecstasy pill with Cassie. Diddy began abusing Cassie in front of the sex worker, who recalls Cassie frequently running away after being assaulted. Every time she would get assaulted, she'd run off. When she'd come back, they'd go in her room for 30 minutes and come back like nothing happened. 2024 footage shows Diddy reacting to the growing number of civil lawsuits, saying he was struggling, not doing anything regarding the allegations. This girl was on my last album, Dawn, is now calling me a monster. F that. That's episode 3. Basically tapping into what was going on with Cassie, the relationship, and, Dawn, Aubrey O'Day, all that stuff. And finally, the last episode is titled Blink Again. Capricorn Clark appears. She started as an assistant for Diddy in April 2004. She recalls Diddy confronting her about her connection to Suge and telling her he'd kill her if anything ever happened. She was later promoted to global brand director from 2008 to 2012. She said, he's good at mental games, good at getting under your skin, good at attacking your fears, and good at retaliation. Then the producer, Lil Rod, appears. He was working on Diddy's album. He says he witnessed a man, Justin, and Diddy walk into the bathroom before he heard gunshots. The man was bleeding inside the bathroom. So this is a lawsuit that was sent out to Diddy, I believe in 2024. But he goes into more detail, and on camera talking about it is obviously you get a different feeling for it. He says he helped the man outside as the ambulance arrived. He says Puff told him to claim the shooting didn't happen when it actually occurred. Everything disappeared afterward. Lil Rod was shook, but says everyone acted like nothing happened. He continued working with him. He says Diddy began promising him things, and Combs allegedly even showed him a video of a man being penetrated, which is crazy. Roger Bond says Diddy groomed his children to be like him. The sad part about it is you will never know if they agree or disagree with their father because they can't say it. Very true. Lil Rod says he began realizing he was being drugged often. He tried to confide in KK, but she would downplay it. He says things happened to him that he would never speak of. He tried to keep up appearances until the Love album was finished, but once it was done, he says he constantly waited for payment. And yeah, he has voice messages of Diddy basically leaving him a bunch of voice messages, and clearly he didn't pay him because Diddy in the voice messages says, "Are you mad at me because I didn't pay you?" Basically all this stuff. Capricorn Clark says Diddy intentionally didn't pay people because it kept them needy. Lil Rod says all he ever was offered for producing the album was $29,000, and he still never received it. When the CNN Cassie elevator video dropped, Lil Rod says he finally found the confidence to file his bombshell lawsuit. Aubrey Day reads an affidavit from an ex of someone at Bad Boy who alleged she saw Aubrey being vaginally and orally penetrated by Diddy and another person while Aubrey appeared to be passed out. September 11, 2024 came, and Don's lawsuit goes public. Footage shows Diddy reacting to the news and immediately calling Kalina, which is the other half of Diddy Dirty Money. Kalina Harper says Diddy called her the moment Don's lawsuit dropped. She was shocked after reading the 50-page filing. Before this, Kalina had asked Diddy for $5,000 to help with custody case, and he declined, but then turned around and asked her for a favor when Don's lawsuit hit. She becomes emotional, saying she didn't know exactly what happened with Don, but didn't want to be Diddy's defense. Kalina plays a recording of Puff asking her to make a statement. She ultimately does it, which is basically, one of the few people that actually defended Diddy, but in this documentary says that she didn't mean to do it. September 16, 2024, Diddy is arrested. Flashback to 2011. This is where we get to the Kid Cudi incident. Capricorn Clark speaks about Cassie hanging out with Kid Cudi. Cassie asks if Cudi could take a hike with them. Not long after, Diddy arrived at Capricorn's door with a gun, saying he was going to kill Kid Cudi. Diddy went to Cudi's house, but Cudi happened to be with Cassie. Capricorn became his hostage until Cassie revealed her whereabouts. Diddy allegedly threatened to kill everyone if he got caught. Capricorn is fired for not revealing Cassie and Cudi's relationship. Fast forward to his trial, Diddy is acquitted of the more serious charges. Vlogger Tisa Tells says she saw Diddy's PR machine at work and that they even approached her with transcripts highlighting what she should report. She believes other bloggers took the offer. So basically, Diddy was probably paying media outlets, influencers that were covering the event to twist the narrative, to say that, hey, Diddy isn't this bad guy, that blah, 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 right? What's interesting is the two jurors in this documentary got interviewed. So the two jurors gave their account of the trial. One did not believe Capricorn Clark was kidnapped. Capricorn thinks the jurors were starstruck. So that was the interesting part about this whole thing, was that the jury, the trial was talked about and how these jurors didn't fully understand the context of things. One of the jurors said that Cassie was going back with Diddy, then leaving Diddy, then going back with Diddy. Like one day they would get into fights, the next day they would be cool and have fun. But that's how the psychological manipulation is. You can't assume because one day someone's cool with somebody, and the next day they're having fights, and the next day they're cool, that this is a healthy relationship. This is something that's positive. You got to know there's some type of manipulation, especially with Cassie being 19 years old when he got with Diddy. Like clear manipulation, clear grooming around that time. So that's a huge ball dropped on the juror's part. But that's I'm glad that kind of made that very clear in this documentary. Diddy's childhood friend says that Kirk Burroughs has the most legitimate claims out of anyone. Burroughs also says he was sexually assaulted, tricked out of his 25% of Bad Boy, and ultimately blackballed. And then it ends with like Diddy, saying some quote about life is this and my movie's going to end, in a great way. And that's the gist really of the documentary. My review of it is that it was well executed. I didn't like the camera angles of the people that were getting interviewed. There were some camera angles where their faces were just like cut off, and I don't know if they intentionally did that. That's my only gripe with this documentary. When I make documentaries, the only thing that I suck at is the music, the score behind it. That's where I really, really need help at. But other than that, this is the type of documentary I would have made. I would have had different choices in terms of a little bit of execution, but very well done, man. I give it a 9 out of 10. I think there really isn't bias in this. It's like very well orchestrated. 50's not even in the documentary. He's not talking about Diddy. He's not, accusing him of things. He's not slandering him. It's a very well written documentary. That's not the hit piece that they're saying that is. They got footage to back up some things as well. They got people that were close to this guy for years. I don't know, man. I think for the most part, it's obviously the best documentary that's out there related to this stuff. And, I don't think not Netflix, but Diddy's team is really going to have anything to sue anybody over. When you actually watch the documentary, it's very well balanced. It makes it clear what Diddy's charged with, what he's not charged with in every single episode. The pacing is really good. Obviously, there's been some people that have passed away that couldn't speak on certain situations, which sucks. But, I just like the way it set up how Diddy got to where he's at. Like, there's certain events in this guy's life that caused all this to happen. It's clear as day. Watching his mom throw these parties, getting abused by his mom, then, getting away with major incidences. Getting people killed, essentially, allegedly. And getting away with all these things. Nothing leading back to him. I mean, he wasn't even helping with the Biggie situation. And he's not even a street, like Diddy technically isn't from the streets. So him helping with the Biggie situation, like if you really cared about Biggie that much, you would have helped. But I believe it was the detective that made a good point. He was like, if Diddy would have helped with the Biggie situation, it would have fixed the Tupac situation. And that could have potentially led to him allegedly ordering the hit on Tupac. So that's why he probably never helped. Regardless, I enjoy the documentary. If you haven't seen it, go ahead and check it out. It is 4 parts, roughly an hour each. My review of it is 9 out of 10. Very well executed. I think the camera angles were a little bit off. And, I wish they would have got Cassie into this. I wish they would have got a few other pieces. But, hey, what are you going to do? You can't get everybody. I think the person who gets Cassie for a documentary will be, the ultimate documentary when it comes to this Diddy situation. But I don't think she's ever going to speak. I just don't see it. They got Aubrey, which is, one of the people. They got a few of the victims on there, which was great because I think hearing from them directly is more important than just reading, a lawsuit or, a statement they say online. Like actually seeing them talk about it gives you a different feeling of the situation. So that's my take on the documentary, and that's my thoughts. Now let's get into the Billboard Hot 100, and Taylor Swift is still at number 1 with The Fate of Ophelia. Number 2 is Golden Hunter X. Number 3 is Ordinary, Alex Warren. Number 4 is Olivia Dean, Man I Need. Number 5 is All I Want for Christmas Is You, Mariah Carey. Number 6 is Last Christmas, Wham. Number 7 is Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree, Brenda Lee. Number 8 is Jingle Bell Rock, Bobby Helms, all Christmas records. Number 9 is Mutt, Leon Thomas. And number 10 is Opal Light, Taylor Swift. Let's go down the list. I usually always do the first top 10, and then after that, it's just hip-hop and R&B. Chris Brown featuring Bryce Tiller, It Depends, at number 28. BX The Plug, Hell at Night, number 46. WGFT, Gunna, number 47. Shot Calling, NBA Youngboy, number 64. Metro Boomin, Take Me Through There, number 70. Tyler the Creator, Sugar on My Tongue, number 76. NF Fear, number 77. Time, Cardi B, number 79. Cold BX The Plug, number 82. That's a debut with Post Malone. BX The Plug's been doing a lot of like country type of records. G Herbo Went Legit, number 89. That song's been on the charts for a fat minute, bro. 19 weeks. Crazy. But it's been stuck at that spot forever. Safe, Cardi B, number 93. And NBA Youngboy, What You Is, re-entry at number 99. And that's it for today's episode of the Diverse Mentality Podcast. Stream us, Spotify, Deezer, Pocket Cast, YouTube, all that. Have an amazing night, day, whenever you listen to this, and peace.